Single dad walked into the bathroom and suddenly saw a woman. What she said next left him stunned. He had barely slept in 3 nights when the sound of running water pulled him down the hallway. The house was supposed to be empty except for him and his 5-year-old daughter. The babysitter had canceled. The world felt heavier than ever, and his thoughts were already a storm. But when he pushed open the bathroom door, steam curling into the hallway, he froze. A woman stood there, soaked, trembling, staring back at him with eyes that held years of silence. And in that breathless second, his entire life shifted. Before we go any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles that happen when hearts refuse to give up, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Grandma Dearie. Your support keeps these stories alive. Daniel had been raising his daughter Lily alone since the night his wife vanished from their lives. No explanation, no note, just a half-empty closet and a silence that swallowed the house whole. For 2 years, he learned how to braid hair with trembling fingers, how to pack tiny lunches with encouraging notes, how to answer the question he feared most: when is mommy coming home? He worked long hours as a mechanic, came home exhausted, and still found strength to build pillow forts and read bedtime stories with a smile that hid his cracks. That morning had been particularly hard. Lily had woken up with a fever, her small body warm against his chest. He'd stayed home from work, juggling cold compresses and whispered reassurances. When she finally fell asleep on the couch, he stepped away for just a moment to splash water on his face and gather himself. That's when he heard it, the shower running in the guest bathroom. He thought maybe he'd left it on, though he was sure he hadn't. The house was old, the pipes unpredictable. But when he opened the door, the sight in front of him shattered every logical explanation. A woman stood wrapped in one of his old green towels, her hair damp and darker than he remembered, her face thinner but unmistakable. It was Emily, the woman who had once laughed in this very room, who had promised forever, who had disappeared without a word. For a heartbeat, he thought he was hallucinating from exhaustion. His hands gripped the doorframe to steady himself. Her eyes met his, wide and filled with something that wasn't fear but shame. She looked like someone who had walked through storms alone. The silence between them was heavier than anger. It was the weight of years lost. Daniel's first instinct was fury. Nights spent packing with a crying baby. School events attended alone. Doctor visits. Birthdays. Every memory rose like fire in his chest. But then he noticed the bruises on her arms, faint but visible. The way her shoulders trembled, not from cold, but from carrying something too heavy for too long. She began to speak, her voice fragile but steady. She told him she had left because she thought she was protecting them, that she had been drowning in debt she hid from him, threatened by someone dangerous over a failed business investment she made secretly, trying to surprise him. When things spiraled out of control, fear convinced her that disappearing was the only way to keep Daniel and Lily safe. She had cut off all contact, believing distance was protection. Daniel listened, every word hitting him like a wave. He wanted to reject it, to call it an excuse, but her eyes held no defense, only regret. She explained that the threats had finally ended months ago. The man who had intimidated her had been arrested for unrelated crimes. She had spent those months rebuilding herself, working quietly, paying off what she owed, gathering the courage to come back. She had stood outside the house for hours that morning before using the spare key hidden under the porch stone. She said she didn't know if she deserved forgiveness. She just needed to see Lily, even if it meant walking away again afterward. Daniel's mind raced. The pain of abandonment still throbbed. He remembered Lily crying on her birthday last year, staring at the empty chair at the kitchen table. He remembered himself promising that no one would ever leave her again, and here stood the woman who had broken that promise. But life isn't always made of villains and heroes. Sometimes it's made of frightened people making terrible decisions. From the hallway, a small voice called out weakly. Lily had woken up. Daniel stepped aside, his heart pounding as tiny footsteps padded toward them. When Lily appeared in the doorway and saw the woman, time seemed to stop. For a moment, confusion clouded her little face. Then recognition flickered. Emily dropped to her knees, tears streaming freely now, not daring to reach out first. Daniel watched as Lily studied her, as if measuring truth by instinct. Then slowly, uncertainly, Lily stepped forward and wrapped her small arms around her mother's neck. Daniel felt something inside him break and mend at the same time. The road ahead wouldn't be simple. Trust doesn't rebuild in a single morning. Pain doesn't evaporate with one explanation. But as he stood there, watching his daughter cling to the woman she had missed every single night, he realized that forgiveness is not about erasing the past. It's about deciding the future deserves a chance. Over the following weeks, Emily stayed in the guest room. Conversations were long, sometimes painful. Daniel asked hard questions. Emily answered without hiding. Therapy sessions were scheduled. Lily's laughter slowly returned to a higher pitch, more frequent, more free. The house that once echoed with emptiness began to breathe again.